9/11 in remembrance of our 9/11 program. The International Network of Women of Emergency Management, Inc., welcome you. Today we will be discussing 9/11. 9/11 and what occurred. And we have some of the folks in the studio with us that will be talking. They were on the ground level, they were in the middle of it. And we just want to remember the impact and what happened and how they're feeling now, 18 years later. What did they remember about it? So we are grateful. We are thankful to Gospel 88.7 WEHA for allowing us this opportunity to be on the air, to just remember that day, remember that moment, remember when that plane hit. Just remember. I want to thank my good friend here, Dr. Jacqueline McBride Jones, who is here with me in the studio. She was on the ground level. She's here with me to just talk a moment about what she remembered, how it impacted her then, and how it impacted her life at this moment in time. Can we just talk to Dr. Jacqueline McBride for a moment?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm humbled and I'm thankful. But most of all, people say, how do I feel? I'm grateful. I'm truly, truly grateful that one day when I was a little girl and I was just born, my mother had just given birth to me, and there was a tidal wave. And the tidal wave came, and my brother, 3 years old, 4 years old at the time, there was one 3 years old upstairs with my mother, and he laid me on the sofa. And when he laid me on the sofa, all of a sudden, all his water come rushing through the bottom of the door. And he ran to the steps and he said, "Mommy, Mommy, come get your beautiful girl. She's going to go out with the flood. She's going to go out with the water." But lo and behold, my father came along, who's an oysterman in Cumberland County, and he had his mates with him, and they rescued us. But what happened was, and I had an epiphany when I was in Katrina, working Katrina, and the epiphany was that I said, people kept asking me, why do you do the work that you do? And I said, I really never thought about it. And then I thought about that moment in time, 1950. My father came along just in time and rescued all of us, he and the mates. And he lifted me high above in the air. And he then said, he just looked at me and with just love, and I know it today because I felt him in my spirit. And today I say to him, thank you for dedicating my life to serving people in emergencies. I've been serving emergency management for I don't know how long. It began with the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts and the Cub Scouts. And it's continued all up until this day. And I just thank everyone for being here. I thank my longtime friend in emergency management, Mr. Vincent. Actually, he's Director Vincent Jones. And of course, my ace boon coon, always by my side, my personal pastor, Pastor Veronica Silver. And I just thank those who will be listening in and those who will be sharing their stories, because I don't want to be here telling my story. I want to hear from the folks out there in the radio land so I can be close to you and know that what you're going through, we're going through. What you're trying to get through, we're trying to get through. And what you will get through, we will get through. Thank you.
It is such a pleasure also to have Director Vincent Jones III, our Chief of Staff of Atlantic County Public Safety. Mr. Jones, you want to just jump in with me? Come on, feel free to just jump right on in. I mean, you were part of this 9/11. And as I remember 9/11, and let me just briefly talk about what is the purpose of this program. This program is to simply remember the resilience of wives, the resilience of husband, children, colleagues that continue to embrace the loss and the grief. With dedication, we remember and honor those fallen heroes. We don't want to forget it. Some people would say, oh, forget it, it was in the past. But you know what? If we don't remember what happened in the past, our future is not understood. So I want to ask Director Jones if he would just jump in and just share with us the impact that 9/11 had 18 years ago on his life, and what is it having on his life now?
Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be here. It's a privilege. And one thing I have to say is you're right. I don't think there was ever an event in our history that brought this country together like the aftermath of 9/11. I mean, this country completely came together. We all grieved together. We were all sad together, and like you said, we got through it together. And I don't think there's ever been another event that has happened. Not that we want that to come out of a tragedy, but moving forward and going forward, it would be nice to see the country come together again, like we did after that. That day, you're right. It'll stay with I think all of us forever. I remember, where we were at that moment when that first plane hit. We actually were on our way. We just got to the State House in Trenton because it was actually we were going up there to recognize our dispatchers, our 911 dispatchers. So it was a National 911 Day for emergency dispatchers. And when we pulled into the State House, the security guard at the gate said, "Did you hear what happened? A plane hit the World Trade Center." Initially we just thought it was maybe a small plane, had hit it as it did, many, many years prior to. It was a clear day, so we're thinking, well, maybe it wasn't the weather. But as we exited the car and started to walk towards the State House, that's when this plane hit the Pentagon, and then things really started to unfold. And we never even made it inside. We just turned around, got in our vehicles, and came back to our office. And then we started planning the assistance to New York City that morning, and sending those people up there to try to help them.
Awesome, awesome. Oh my goodness, to hear. There must be so many stories, and I'm sure you're looking back and you're going, wow, I was part of that. That is amazing. It's amazing. We thank you for being part of that, and we
Thank
thank you
you.
for coming out to talk and to share your story. It is most powerful when you talk to people that were directly in the middle of it. It's difficult when you're in the middle of it and you have to survive it to be able to talk about it afterwards. It's just a blessing, and it's encouraging to everyone. At this time, I think we have a caller on the line. If we wouldn't, yes, amen. Awesome, awesome. At this time, who do we have on the line? Caller, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm sorry, this is Vincent Davis from Amazon.
Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome to our 9/11 in remembrance of. It's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Davis. We want to share. We want you to share your story with about 9/11 with us. We have Vincent Jones here, and we have the awesome Jacqueline McBride here with us in the studio, and we're just talking about how it was that we remember 9/11 that happened 18 years ago, and what we do not want to forget. What are some of the things that you choose not to forget that has really kept you these 18 years that you remember about this 9/11, and how it occurred, how it made you feel, and how you are dealing with it now?
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I'm really very grateful and appreciative. And thank you, Dr. McBride, for inviting me to be on this forum on this historic day. 9/11, I was working in the telecommunications industry. I had not yet embarked on my career in emergency management at that point. I didn't even know I was going to have a career in emergency management that has spanned much of the last 18 years. But what sticks out to me about the day of 9/11 is I was working in telecommunications, and of course heard on the radio that there had been a plane crash in New York, and then a plane had crashed into a building. And like many people, I assumed that it was a small aircraft and somehow got out of their airspace. And of course, when we found out the horrific news of what had actually happened. But the one that sticks out to me that has stuck with me, I have a very close personal friend who I work with in telecommunications. We've been very close friends and work colleagues for 40 plus years. And my friend was actually at the World Trade Center on 9/11. And he had just sat down for a meeting with some business colleagues on the 55th floor of Tower 2. And lo and behold, they felt a little bit of a jolt. And the person that they were with, because he had had prior experience in the 1994 World Trade Center bombing, immediately said, "Okay, let's go. We're getting out of here." And so they started down the stairs, and it took him, he said, about a half hour or more to get down the flights of stairs as they saw firefighters and coming up the stairs. They're still not knowing what happened. He managed to get down to the ground floor, and then, of course, when he came outside, saw the horrific scene that was going on the outside. But what stuck to me about that for all of these years was that not only was he a close personal friend that came so close to losing his life at that point, and thinking of all the many years that he and I have had together since then, but that from a preparedness standpoint, the fact that people needed to be prepared, I think, is what drove me into pursuing my career in emergency management and disaster preparedness, is the idea that if people have some context by which they can prepare for the worst, when it happens, they won't panic, they will be resilient, and they will be able to get from that state that says something just happened to I have to act if I'm going to survive. So I think that's kind of what really, if you would, fueled my career and my interest in disaster and emergency management. And of course, I went on from there to work for FEMA and another number of other organizations for the past 20 years. And my whole focus right now here at Amazon is preparing our employees for the inevitable disasters or emergencies that could happen.
Awesome, awesome. You know, it's always our prayer that things like this doesn't happen again. But you know what you said, the key thing, preparation. Oftentimes we don't think we need to be prepared, and you know, you hear it, and sometimes we become immune to be prepared, and we take it for granted. But I'm so glad that you're speaking on this right now, and a lot of us and a lot of people have lost a lot of personal friends and family in this situation. Now, according to the records, they're saying 3,000 lives were lost, and to me that's 3,000 that they can account for. Okay, you have people on the ground, and you know it's amazing. It's more than 3,000, and not just the people that were lost. You're talking about the people that were affected by the lost, the ones that were lost. So it really affected a lot of folks, and we're grateful that now you're in the business of preparing folks for something else like this that might occur. Not that we want it to occur, but we want to be prepared and we want to be ready. And we are grateful that you're in the business of preparation. And we thank you for calling in today and chatting with us about your experience. It's encouraging, and we want you to continue to be encouraged. Awesome?
Thank you so much again for having me, and I just want to leave you with the idea that I wrote in my book in 2012 that only after we have done everything we can to prepare can we then leave the rest to the Creator.
Awesome, awesome, and you are so right. And we're going to stand on that, and we're going to kind of continue to move in that direction. And prayerfully, everyone listening, the listening audience, will take a cue from you and get themselves prepared and be ready.
Thank you, Vince. This is
Thank you.
Jackie. Bless you.
Thank you, and have a great day. Thank you so much. Oh, and we also have another call on the line. Oh, she hung up. Okay, let's continue on. You know, when we think about 9/11, there's so many things I can remember. I remember the day. I remember my own personal experience. I remember my daughter being in the middle of that 9/11 because she worked in New York at the time. It was something devastating to all of us. At 8:45, September 11, 2001, that first plane hit. And no one at that time knew what was going on. After that, it was continuous. But we don't take it for granted. Today, we want to remember what happened. We don't want to forget, and we don't want you to forget that lives were lost and the sacrifice was paid, that this country paid a dear, dear price for what occurred. And we want you to remember 9/11. We don't want you to forget. And I think we have another caller on the line. I won't continue with my my dissertation. Caller, are you there? Are you there, caller?
Hello, it's Suzanne Bernier calling in. I'm so sorry I was disconnected,
That's all right,
and now
Susan.
I'm
We're
calling back
glad.
in.
We're glad you're here now. Welcome, welcome. I'm here with Director Vincent Jones and the awesome Jacqueline McBride. If you would say hello to them.
Hi, Susan.
Hello, it's
Hi.
wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hi,
Thank
how are
you.
you?
Dr. McBride.
Thank you.
Susan, I'm reading
Yeah, there's
your
some.
I'm reading
Go ahead.
your resume here, and I can't even begin to introduce who you are. You just sound so awesome. I would be here for a
Well, thank
minute
you. I was
trying to
hoping.
talk about who you are. So can you just share with us who you are and add how did 9/11 impact your life then and how it impact your life now? If you can share with us a little bit as we celebrate in remembrance of 9/11 and how this whole thing went down, and we don't want to forget it, and we don't want folks to forget it. We want folks to put it in
Right,
perspective, but we want folks to know that preparation is key. What can you share with us today?
right. Sure. Thank you. And I apologize ahead of time. My phone is very freaking out right now, so I'm hoping we don't get cut off, but
Okay.
I don't know what's happening with it right now. But the one thing I wanted to mention is I'm calling from the 9/11 museum right now,
Wow.
and I've been
Wow.
here all day
Oh,
since
awesome.
7:30 this morning with family members and first responders who have been here all day to be able to honor and remember and memorialize the victims, and also recognize and honor the heroes who responded. But a little bit about my background, and I'll explain how I even became involved. I'm not a New Yorker. I'm actually from Canada. I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Wow.
I was an emergency management officer for the equivalent of the state level emergency management agency when 9/11 happened. I was a field officer, and I was sitting in my home in northern Canada at the time, and I was called by our dispatcher at headquarters saying, "Turn on the television right now. Something really bad is happening in New York City." So I turned on the television, and then I turned it on, and then saw the second tower attack, and then well, of course, like everybody knew, this was
Wow.
something horrible that we would have not seen before, and that really did change the face of emergency management from pre 9/11, when I was an emergency management officer, to post 9/11. There's such a dramatic difference in a good way, of course. But back then, there was limited resources. Anyway, I received a call, turn on the television, see what's happening. And what we had to do from our end, and you might have heard about the planes that were redirected and couldn't come into American airspace. So we had to find Canadian airspace to be able to land those planes. So I was deployed to an area that was identified to be able to host some of those airplanes that weren't allowed to be in U.S. airspace.
Wow.
And so I drove to that space and waited there. There was an emergency operations center set up at the community that was going to host all these planes coming in. We were working with the Red Cross and other agencies to set up shelters where we were going to feed and house these who knows how many passengers from all these different airlines. And then plans changed, as they do, of course, as we all know, working in emergency management, and they were redirected to another community. So then I was redeployed to a border community because all of the border communities had been shut down, if you remember. And because of that, every single border community had to declare an emergency as well.
Wow.
So we had every single community on the border declare emergencies, and we had to go to the emergency operations centers there and communicate back and forth with people who were in New York and provide feedback to those who were guarding, the borders. So that was my involvement in an indirect way, but now it's much more direct, where since then, I recognize as well, since then, I've been to a lot of the disasters that many of you have been at and have been talking about, and every time I'd remember, or I'd realize there's so much positive that we see behind the scenes, right? When we go to areas and we see what we don't get to see in the media, which is people coming together and everybody coming together and helping to rebuild and recover. And that's what I wanted to focus on. So after 9/11 and being at a few other things, I thought I really need to focus on the positive side and focus on the heroes that come out of these disasters. And so I started reaching out and became a lot more connected with the 9/11 survivors, family members, and heroes. And then wrote a book called Disaster Heroes. And my first story is about someone who did something amazing, an ordinary person, to help the New York City Fire Department who lost so many vehicles. Anyway, so that was sort of my first foray into talking about and meeting heroes, specifically everyday heroes who are survivors of 9/11. I'll explain to you as well, perhaps, I'm also a board member of something called the New York Says Thank You Foundation. And for those who haven't heard about what that is, that was something created after 9/11, direct result of 9/11. A man in New York City named Jeff Parnas lost his best friend and business partner in the 9/11 attacks. What he did the next year in his memory and wanting to be able to give back and thank America for what Americans did for New York, he started something called the New York Says Thank You Foundation, which empowers people, first of all, first responders who were part of 9/11, to be able to go to other areas who've experienced disasters on behalf of New York City, to be able to help rebuild other areas, to say thank you for what you did for us at 9/11. Now here's what we're going to do to help thank you and rebuild your community.
Awesome.
So just one example of a survivor or someone who's been directly impacted and lost his best friend and business partner, but turned it into something so positive and healing. And not only does it heal those first responders, but it also helps heal those others who are survivors in other areas, who see those first responders from New York City coming in and helping. And then with the next build, those volunteers and those fire departments and heroes want to come to the next build, and so on and so on. So I really wanted to share that inspirational story. And there are so many of those like that. I was with Elsie today, who lost her daughter in the 9/11 terror attack. She's from Orlando, but flew here to be here with everybody. And she goes around and through the New York Says Thank You Foundation brings messages of hope and healing to survivors of other attacks. And I met her in Orlando after the Pulse nightclub attack, because she went to hand deliver messages of hope and healing through these stars of hope to people there. But she is a 9/11 family member who lost her daughter, and that's her way of giving back and helping her heal and others heal.
Awesome.
Suzanne. This is Jacqueline. I just want to say, it's so
Hi.
fantastic. Hi. And we haven't met face to face, but I think our spirits are touching and agreeing that we have work to do. And I wanted to share one thing with you. When you talk about the Pulse nightclub, my daughter was one of the organizers for the folks getting together and in terms of hope and healing. And I was blessed enough to be there the night of that event. And so we have work to do. Let's stay in touch. And I just thank you for joining us, and continue all that you do. And Pastor?
And Susan, you really spoke of the same sentiment that Director Jones talked about the 9/11 changing our nation, the way we think, the way we feel towards one another. That day, this country came together, and they came together in one mind and one heart. And I look forward to that day to come again, hopefully without a disaster, but simply coming together. That's our hope and that's our dream. And I see that you have this book, Disaster's Hero. It is so awesome. You are in such an awesome place right now. Where you are right now is where you really need to be, Susan. Okay? And thank you so much for your service then. Thank you for what you're doing now. Thank you for the encouragement, the love that you're sharing. Thank you for the hope that you're giving. Please continue giving that hope. Continue extending the love and the care that you are so, so good at. We thank you for just being a part of this 9/11 remembrance today, and we will remember you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, on another final note, and then I'll let you go. And you guys are going to have to hang up on me, I think.
It's okay.
And I can't
It's
hang
all
up
right.
on you guys. But so in the meantime, just one last thing to your beautiful message about how we need to remember how everybody came together. And really, that's another message that I'm here for, is tomorrow I'm part of this walk of another 9/11 family member who lost his cousin, firefighter Ruben Correa, who responded in 9/11. But he wanted to do a walk tomorrow to remember what happened on 9/12, how everybody came together, and it didn't matter what side you were on, what country you were from, what part of the city you were in, what religion you were, right? Everybody came together. So that's what Sergeant Edwin Morales wants to do tomorrow. So he's walking from Queens all the way down to Ground Zero, and I'm walking with him.
Awesome.
And the message is just, there's no point. We're not trying to raise money or raise anything or do we're just trying to raise awareness and say thank you along the way to all the helpers and heroes who came together on 9/12.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Susan.
great.
And just continue to do the work. You're in an awesome place right now. And thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. And we pray that you continue walking in God's hope and His glory and His love.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And God bless you all. Thank you for having me. And I hope to talk to you again one day. In the meantime, I guess I'm going to have you guys hang up on me.
All right. All right. God bless you,
Thank you,
Susan. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, I think we have another caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Hi, please introduce yourself to us. Welcome to our 9/11 in Remembrance program of remembering what occurred on 9/11 and how it impacted our lives and our nation.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come on. My name is Sherelle Parker, and I live in Northern Virginia area, and I retired from the Federal Aviation Administration back in 2007. And however, on 9/11, which is a day that everyone remembers where they were, what they were doing on that day, the one thing that struck me was how clear and blue, crystal clear and blue the sky was that morning when I was driving to work. I actually worked at Dulles International Airport, and I was employed at that time as the air traffic manager for the control tower there at Dulles International Airport.
Wow.
Wow. This is, we have on the line President CEO Sherelle Carper, right? And
That's correct.
And she's
Of
with the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Club. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you kind of like we got together today and really folded in and talked about and communicated. What's the phone number? Okay, here's the information. Email me, fax, whatever. But you're here, and you're here now, and so just share with you whatever it's placed on your heart to share as far as 9/11 goes.
You know, Sherelle, I want to ask you a question before we start. At that time, 9/11, 2001, where were you? How did it feel? At that time, how did this disaster affect your life compared to how you're remembering it now? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Because my walk with the Lord has grown, and I've been growing, I realized that we were blessed on that day. It didn't really hit me that way the day I was there because you go into a mode of survival and what needs to be done, because we believed at that time we were just being attacked. And being in what is called the radar room, where our controllers who are working actually the radar equipment, I happened to be in the room. And we had a little TV, and that's where the controllers could monitor. Well, it was at the supervisor's desk where we could monitor the weather. However, we got an interruption for the weather, and the first thing we saw on the TV was a large jumbo jet aircraft flying into the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And immediately the controller, first thing I had to do is, okay, let's stay calm. We know that this is not normal. We have, of course, in aviation, we have rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the rules, the flight rules, are that because of the airspace in the New York area, the obstructions and the height of the World Trade, aircraft had to be at least 1,000 feet above the World Trade Centers. So immediately when we saw, and then on the TV initially, they said it was a small aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked at the film again, I said, that is not a small aircraft. But the other thing that hit me, because I started my career as an air traffic controller, the first African-American air traffic controller at LaGuardia Tower back in 1972. I started there. And I knew, because of the regulations, as I explained, that the aircraft should not have been in that position, should have not even been in that area. And so because of the 1,000 miles obstruction above the World Trade, I knew that was not an accident. So the first thing that came to mind is I called LaGuardia and to talk to the supervisor up there, and I didn't get an answer. So right then I knew something was wrong. And one of my managers was actually departing from Dulles to go to a meeting up in New York. And I had somehow we got a hold of him and said, you have to come back. We have an emergency. And so he was able to get back because at that time, I had a number of controllers that were assigned to the radar room, which is the dark room where they watch the radar scopes. And then I had another set of controllers, a crew, that were up in the tower itself where they use visual. They can see out the window. So after this incident occurred, when the first one hit, which there were 4 aircraft, and they were all jumbo jet aircraft. Either they were 767s or they were 757s. American 77 was the third aircraft that departed. They were all leaving from East Coast, traveling to the West Coast, which meant they had ample fuel. And the aircraft had enough fuel to take them from the east to the west. So that's a lot. Now, the aircraft themselves probably weren't full to capacity. However, when American 77, he taxied out normal to the runway. He departed normal on a normal flight. I mean, I had to listen to these tapes of the recordings over and over and over. And it just embedded in my head because we were looking for just something that was said that was abnormal. Then we realized that the hijackers actually came into the cockpit after he departed. The American 77 departed Dulles around 8:20 that morning. And so about 50 minutes later, there's equipment in the aircraft that is called transponders, which gives you, the pilot, the speed of the aircraft and the flight altitude of the aircraft. Well, what they did, the hijackers, first thing was to turn off that particular instrument. So when the two hit the north and south towers, one of my colleagues gave a command that every aircraft that was in the air, which was over 4,000, needed to land. And so what that meant was, it was called a national ground stop, meant that no aircraft would be taking off. And those coming across the pond, which is coming from Europe, had to also land to the nearest airport that they could find, because at that time we did not know what was happening was there going to be another aircraft that was going to be crash into a building, or how we were being attacked. So all aircraft were landed. So Dulles immediately became an airport for aircraft that were in the area, near the area, coming or going south or north, for us to take landings. Almost an hour later, about maybe 45 minutes later, when we started all the landings, and we had gotten as many, the air traffic controllers nationwide did an exceptional job to get more than 4,000 aircraft landed within 2 hours.
Wow.
It was just amazing. And when you say come together and there's hope, the camaraderie amongst the controllers, even at my facility, we were pulling together because, of course, we had no idea what was going on. I went down to a skeleton crew because I didn't know what was going to happen to us. I sent one of my supervisors, and I told them, I said, you take half of the crew and you go over as far as you can to another area so that if we need a backup team, we'll have one. And so that's what we did. And then about 45 minutes later, we saw a blimp on the radar. We couldn't tell what the speed was. We couldn't tell how high it was. There was nothing because the transponder, as I told you, they turned them off. And the next thing, we knew that he was coming towards Washington, D.C. Now, the control tower is 425 feet up in height at Dulles Airport. Of course, we have a new tower there now, but that was the height of the tower that I was working in. So I had no idea. All I knew is this aircraft was coming towards us. And lo and behold, thank God that he flew past us. And when that happened, we alerted. I have what's called a script telephone. It's a crypt phone that we use directly to the White House. I called and said, we have a target moving fast, coming towards Washington, D.C. We don't know the altitude. We don't know the speed. We don't know which aircraft, because now the ground stop was in effect, so everybody was down. We were missing 2 aircraft, American 77 and United 93. Those were the only 2 that we could not find. And the aircraft, the blimp flew over the tower directly towards Washington, D.C. It looked like it was going directly towards the Capitol building. However, it made a quick turn, and we knew that it was probably looking for the White House because of the foliage. It was September, and the leaves were full, the trees were full. It could not see the White House, so it flew over Washington National Airport and turned and banked and went right and crashed into the Pentagon. Now, there were 58 passengers on board that flight, plus the number of people that perished at the Pentagon when he crashed into the Pentagon. So when you saw our vice president being escorted from out of the White House, that was after we made the phone call over and told them that we have the fast-moving target coming towards the White House or D.C., and that's when they escorted Vice President out of the White House. So it's a day that I'll never forget because of the aftermath. We always had, for the next 4 or 5 years, we would allow aircraft to shut down the airport and have families of the ones that perished to do a motorcycle ride on the runway in recognition and remembrance of American 77. There was an African-American flight attendant on 77, and Leroy Homer was the 3rd officer, African-American from Long Island, New York, who was on United 93. We had some young school kids that were taking a field trip from Washington to LA, African American school that was on board American 77.
Wow. Wow.
Well, President,
Wow.
and I know there's more in your spirit and your heart that you could share with us, and we could just sit here, I guess, until forever. When I listen to you, I think about myself and the experience that I had was when the event occurred. I was home, and family started calling and said, "Watch the TV." And then the very next day, I was deployed to New York City, but we could not get into New York City. So we had to go over to Fort Kilmer, and we stayed overnight. And as the highway was blank, there was no cars at all on the highways. And as I looked at the skyline into New York as I'm driving from New Jersey, and I'm up in North Jersey now, and I looked at the skyline, and all I could see was this smoke. And I said, "Oh my God, what has just happened?" And you get yourself together at that point because you know you're on a mission. You're deployed. You know you're there. You know you're there for a reason. And then once you get there, it's just like the streets were empty, and you look up and all you could see was law enforcement with every kind of weaponry that you could think of. And I said, "This is really going down." To myself, I'm in the car, I'm talking to myself literally. And there was like 30 cars behind me. We were doing a caravan because that's the only way we could get to New York City. But the thing I remember most about it was, and I was blessed enough to have a supervisor. She was the cadre coordinator. The cadre, yeah, they were called coordinators at that time. She was a cadre coordinator, and she said, "Well, we need you to go to next door." Well, at that time, buildings were down, crashed. Police department, I think, several other buildings, and so we had to stay on the pier. I think it was Pier 98.
Yeah.
And I sat outside with my best friend, and I said, "What has just happened?" And that's when you would keep repeating that to yourselves and to each other. And then you'd shake it off and you go off and you try to support those people who were coming to the facilities. We were right next door on the pier to the Family Assistance Center. And I was blessed enough to work in there to be able to just feel the energy, the pain, the anguish, and the hurt, but yet a sense of a love in their spirit, that there was no malice. I did not feel that. And then you leave that and you go outside, and now outside that lined the streets of the pier were pictures of persons who were missing and flowers, and those are my remembrance. And then the personal thing for me was, yes, we stayed there in New York City. I was there for 7 months and never left. I said I would not leave until my tour of duty is over. But in that 7 months, I had to walk around with a backpack. And that backpack was filled with not just FEMA gear, but my personal gear, because you did not know if they were going to come back. And that's all I kept saying. Be prepared. From water to clothes to everything that you would have if you have in the safe in your house, everything is in this backpack. Because I kept saying to myself, you have to take everything. I had some drops. My eyes became infected. The doctor FedExed me some drops, and I had the drops. And it was just those kinds of things that you think about, but you keep going because you know that's your destiny. That's your purpose, and that you're here to help those to get through. And sad as it may seem, 2 days later, a plane crashed into Brooklyn, and we had teams over there, and no communication. So it was some experiences that I will never forget, experiences that I live with every day. But I'm also thankful that my destiny and purpose assigned me to serve 9/11, along with all the other disasters that I've been involved in. But that was that to me was something that it will last with me forever. And so,
Yes,
Pastor?
absolutely.
Wow, I am so, my heart is racing. As a civilian, my heart is racing. You really don't know the extent of how the people that were inside on the ground level were feeling. We were looking at it on television and we were going, wow, what is going on? Dr. McBride, she's telling you she was right in the middle on the ground level. In the middle of this, you were right there. It just makes my heart race. So this is why we cannot and we will not forget 9/11. We will not forget the impact that it had on our country. We will not forget the impact it had on each of our lives. We want to remember. We want to remember that we are always have to be prepared because we don't know what's going to happen from day to day. We are so grateful for your story. We're so grateful that you were placed where you were placed to see that object coming at us. We're so grateful that you were there and you were trained to know what to do.
Yes,
We're thankful for that. And we want you to know today we are thankful for you. We
thank you, ma'am.
thank you
Thank
that you followed instruction to the T and you are alive today to tell the story.
Such a
Yeah,
strategic position.
absolutely.
How
Thank you.
awesome is that? We thank God. And it's only
Yes.
because of Him that you were strategically placed at the strategic time to do what you were called on this planet, on this earth, to do for our society.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you're right. God strategically placed me there. Who would have known that would ever? 9/11 has changed the way we do business in the aviation field and any
Everything.
kind of mode. Now you see we have to be to airports 2 hours in advance of a flight. We have to go through security that we didn't have to go through. But it really did not. That wouldn't have made a difference if we had that type of security set up back then, because those 4 gentlemen that came through Dulles, they were dressed regularly. I mean, they weren't dressed any different than anyone else.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't have known.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But thank
But
God.
anyway.
Thank God for the preparation. Thank God for you. Thank God for all of the men and women that sacrificed their life. Thank you for the firefighters that passed. Thank you for the first responders. Thank you for all of the families affected, the ones that we know about, the ones that we don't know about. We thank God that, you know what, that their lives is not in vain. Today we want to recognize all of our fallen heroes. We want to let them know that we remember them. They are not forgotten.
Not forgotten.
You are not forgotten for being part of this memory. Okay? Dr. McBride is not forgotten. Vince, you are not forgotten. You are not forgotten, Susan. You are not forgotten for being a part of that experience. We are so grateful for the moment and the times that you guys had in that moment to share with us today. We are thanking you in advance. We say that continue to move, continue to keep the memory, put it in perspective, and hold it dear to your heart to know that you survive something miraculous.
Yes.
And we'll get together real soon, because it sounds like we might have some projects to do together.
Sounds like Doc. She always got a project on the mind. And I know she's going to be telling me about it too. Sherelle, it was a pleasure hearing your story. We look forward to talking with you again and look forward, hopefully, to seeing you sometime.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for what you're doing on today to remember those who were perished on that day. It's a great thing you're doing.
All right. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
It has been a wonderful time we had. We're listening to Gospel 88.7 FM, WEHE. Thank you for listening to us today. We are grateful that you've tuned in to our 9/11 in Remembrance program. As we close out today, I want to say to all of our listening audience, please do not forget our fallen heroes. Don't forget the price that this country paid. Don't forget the warmth, the love that was shared on that day. Let us try to get back to that moment in time when we loved each other unconditionally, when we didn't look at the color of our skin or the religion that we were part of. We looked at the one thing, we looked at love. We looked at love and we say, you know what, let's embrace each other. That warmth we felt at that moment in time. We are grateful. We are thankful today. We have a caller on the line. Let's definitely not exclude them. Caller, you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, I am. This is Deacon Hawks.
Hi, praise the Lord.
God
Bless you.
Oh,
God
it's so
bless
awesome
you.
to hear your voice. Thank you so
too.
much for calling in.
I know you right at the conclusion, but I just wanted to let you know how wonderful the program was and how informative it was, and it was just perfect. Something to commemorate such an event 18 years ago, and I'm like most Americans, I can remember exactly where I was and exactly what I was doing, and no words could really express the sentiments, but programs like this in remembrance does everything to kind of just let everybody know how important it is to do just that and to remember. So I applaud you, and I thank you on behalf of myself and my wife and all of us at WEHA and the community at large. God bless you.
God bless you. You're listening to El Presidente, our president. Good to hear from you.
God
We are-
bless you.
We are
God
so
bless you.
grateful here. Dr. McBride, thank you so much. I want you to just give a little bit of glip before we go on out. Dr. McBride, it was in the ground level. I lived 9/11 through her. I live it through her because she was right there. So just close out a little bit. Just give a little bit of, for our listening audience, what should they remember about
I'm gonna
9/11?
hang up. You take your time and go ahead and close out, and don't leave anything out.
I will try my best, El Presidente. God bless you.
God bless you.
I'ma hang
God,
up. Bye-bye.
God bless
All
you.
right, God bless.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for us to join your organization, your gospel show. What can I say? I think it's all been said. We remember the grief, but we won't carry it. We'll remember the hours, the days, the weeks, the months, the 18 years, but we will honor what we have endured. We will never forget the look when you looked in someone's eyes and you could feel what they felt, and you could be able to just put your arms around them and embrace them and let them know this too shall pass. And so I just close out by saying, I'm just saying.
Awesome. That's our favorite saying. That's our favorite saying. I'm just saying. And I want to give Vincent also to just chime in with us as we close out our program in remembrance of 9/11. What's your closing word for our listening audience?
I think just please always remember that day, and like you said, and the people that were there, and the families, and let's come back together as a country, as a people, and just, like you said, love one another, and again, thank you for being here, and Dr. thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, you're listening to Gospel 88.7 on your listening dial, WEHA. Thank you for listeing to us today. God bless you all.
Thank you, Pastor
Thank you.
Silver.
Thank you for listening to us today. God bless you all.
Thank you, Pastor Silver.
He promised me he will.
Listening to us today. God bless you all.
right, I hope you all enjoyed that remembrance program for 9/11. We wanted to celebrate the lives of the survivors. We want to celebrate the things that the people who have passed, and we will always want to remember the first responders, everything that changed after that. Our whole society has changed since 9/11, and it's always important to remember that every year. This is Professor J on Gospel 88.7 FM WEHA. You were listening to BB Winans, He Promised Me, and in a couple of minutes we have a couple more songs for you guys. And I just wanted to let you guys know while you're still listening that we do have the banquet coming up this Saturday at 11 a.m. To remember the 10 years anniversary of Gospel 88.7 FM WEHA. And so make sure that you come to the banquet. Have a blessed day, and we will see you there. Gospel 88.7 FM WEHA. And so make sure that you come to the banquet. Have a blessed day, and we will see you there. Gospel 88.7 FM WEHA.